So right here is good?
Perfect. Okay. Love it.
Hello, everyone. I thought what I'd start talking at you about today is just to clarify some things about technology in the classroom and to focus a little bit on the difference between the sexy technology and the effective technology. So if there is one thing that I would hope you would take away from anything I might say today, it is, you know, that really unimpressive beige color that a lot of desktop computers are? Um, those are the ones you want. Okay. So any technology work in the classroom, I think, really should focus on trying to find the cheapest tool and really, really staying away from the degree of difficulty points that so often gets people excited about technology in class. One of the things that I do in my mind when I'm interviewing teachers or prospective candidates is when I ask them about technology, because technology is very important age, if they start talking about products that were developed by the Apple Computer Company, I immediately check them. No, I'm not interested. And that's not to say that I don't have those products in my house. But I think it's really important to recognize that what has happened over and over and over again, and I consider myself first among equals. I was a magnet coordinator for a technology magnet at a big public high school in South San Jose, and I personally wasted about $750,000. So I did a great job of getting excited about the sex appeal and buying a bunch of toys, and they're still there at Gunderson where I worked, and they're still as useless as they were when I was there. I think it's really crucial to understand that the benefit of technology is not the hardware. It's not the cool projection tool. It's not the amazing tablet thing where you can, it's not any of that. Because what that depends on is that a teacher who's delivering that work become knowledgeable about what it takes to make that useful for kids. And so I really encourage you, as you think through what you're investing in, to only invest in things that do not demand that teachers become knowledgeable. Because while I think training for teachers is something that definitely is worth investing in, training teachers on how to use technology is not what would be my first thing. Training teachers on how to use the data that technology work with students picks up would be an incredible thing to invest in. Let me give you an example of what we do at AIM. We have a computer lab that has basically two things in it. We have these really ugly beige boxes, and we have headphones. And we have 30 computers. And running that room is a 21-year-old college student who is really trained only in making sure that kids are trying hard and that kids are being respectful and that they're doing the work. And the kids log on to this online math program, which they take a diagnostic, and the computer program, the online program, ascertains where they're at, gives them a series of problems. If they get 3 problems in a row right at a certain level, it gives them a slightly harder problem. If they get 3 problems in a row wrong on a certain level, it gives them a slightly easier problem. So as you walk down the aisle, you'll see 30 kids doing everything from, at ACE, it could be single-digit addition to pre-algebra. That's a really, really high impact technology-enabled moment, because what technology can do that teachers really can't do is in a classroom of 30 to 1, or in some really impacted districts, 35 to 1. It does 35 different things. That's the key. The key is not learning how to do PowerPoint. I mean, I just can't tell you how much playing with fonts goes on under the title of working with technology. I don't know if you all enjoy PowerPoint. I tend not to, and I tend not to enjoy the ones that kids make even less because they're terrible at it. So I think it's really important as you sort of enter the space of thinking about technology in schools is that if you can find a way to make teachers more effective without them having to be specially gifted technological people, if some of the people who admitted their lack of facility with technology in this room could use it, I think that's a good standard. Because everyone on my staff, when those kids finish a period, it kicks out a data report that's really, really easy to see. It's like, one did 15 problems on single-digit addition, you got 11 right, you still need to be working on that. Any teacher who's worth their salt can use that immediately. They don't need to understand anything about technology. What they need to understand is, while these 30 kids are doing different things, maybe I can pull the 2 kids that the data shows me are exactly at the same level and do a little teaching, because that's what I know how to do. So while I think it's really cool that at some schools kids are learning to make apps or websites or make, I think digital video and digital cameras can enhance something. There's quite a bit of stuff out there that can be implemented cheaply and can make teachers better at teaching. It's not necessarily exciting stuff for kids. I don't think any students go into the lab and say, yes, single-digit arithmetic, one more day. Yes. No, they go and they get to see their achievement over time improve. And if they're bored, that's okay. And if they're irritable, that's okay, because they couldn't add 7 plus 6 a week ago, and now they're getting better. So when you think about funding technology, our standards are cheap boxes and no software. Okay? Everything needs to be online. So software means people who know how to manage software when software doesn't work. And if you're going to fund something, if you're like most funders, you're going to be unwilling to fund what schools really need, which is a lab coordinator and a tech person. I don't know of any funders who are like, you know what, why don't we get you some tech support? No one says that. It's what ACE actually needs. But again, ACE is funding its own tech support, and that's fine. But the point is that you want to give schools an opportunity to have the tools and not get tangled up in the implementation of those tools. I think very often, it's just like calculators. I remember during part of my teaching career, there was a momentary fad for calculators. That HP would give schools all those, what are those? Yeah, whatever. And we had hundreds of them, and none of the teachers knew how to use them, and we gave them to the kids, and then we yelled at them if they lost them, but it wasn't really anything that they could use seamlessly, except for the 2 or 3 people who the funders wanted to see in action, who were the great teachers to use. So that's my rant about technology. I really think that if you explore what's out there, there's a lot of stuff that does the one thing technology should do, which is personalize the education for kids without needing teachers to be really, really adept at technology. I think that's really important. So again, one of my board members was like, oh, I saw this great thing, we could get Adobe Illustrator for free, and I was like, no thanks. Not that I don't think eventually our kids learning how to use Adobe Illustrator would be good, but right now they can't act. So we're going to spend our technology dollars on that. I think that the other thing to know about technology is that as a middle school and high school guy, I feel like I was born a little too early, because I think in 5 or 10 years, the middle school stuff is going to catch up to the elementary school stuff. But right now, especially in math, but in phonics and foundational skills, there's web-based stuff out there that is really, really good. It's really good. Really smart people are doing really good stuff. What we struggle with at ACE is, while we found a math program that we're reasonably happy with, for English language arts, we don't have anything in technology that we feel really comfortable with. And so, anything online, anything web-based that we can say, all right, this can truly personalize. Yes, our kids who don't know phonics can benefit from the same thing that third grader or second grader knows. But there's a big, big gap out there for the complexity that English language arts standard teaching demands, and that is sufficiently user friendly that a kid doesn't need a teacher to be there as they use the technology. So what we've done at ACE is we call it tutor enabled tech. So there's a whole bunch of technology out there. Some of you might have heard of Khan Academy and various things where it's like, oh, it's all out there for kids, but for the ACE kids, and I would argue for the vast majority of English learners, they need a tour guide to use that. And so that's another thing to remember is that if you're going to go in the English language arts direction, one of the things that is worth exploring, I think, with any potential grantee is what is it that the teacher can do to make it usable for the kid, or maybe another way of saying it, how much does the teacher need to do to make it usable for the kid? To be honest, if I was on your side of the table, I think I think it's really, really disastrously unfortunate that elementary schools all over that are really struggling are not taking advantage of the technology that's out there. I think it's really, really, I think, worthwhile to think about training teachers and how to better serve English learners. But I think the impact of that is, by definition, kind of like trench warfare. One more school gets trained in GLAD strategy. One more school gets trained in how to do sheltered science and math. That's a slow process. But the smart bomb is just giving schools a model for K-3 foundational skills using very cheap boxes and using online stuff that anyone can do tomorrow, and they save a ton of money because you can have 35 to 1 and you don't need a high-powered teacher in the classroom. You need a person who can keep the trains running on time, make sure the kids are respectful of stuff, who can maybe have a couple of tutors with aides in there to pull kids. But right now, when I look at districts who are really on the verge of bankruptcy, and who are often complaining that they're forced this whole last hired, first fired thing that they're struggling with, often finding that they have to hang on to some of their least effective teachers, and the teachers who are least interested in personalizing the instruction. That's where I see the big sort of uncapitalized on acreage, because it's happening in a bunch of forward-thinking charters and district schools. It's cheaper, and it's really, really exactly what the lowest achieving kids need, which is personalized instruction. It doesn't make them feel like a liability because they don't know the second grade standards in fourth grade. The computer doesn't care. It doesn't grimace when you don't know. It doesn't roll its eyes. It doesn't ask you to sit in the back of the room and work by yourself. It says, okay, you want to learn 7 plus 2, let's do it. And it's the same school drawings, and you get the same line on the graph of improvement. So I think that there's a sense that teachers have that technology is really complicated. It's going to complicate my life. It's going to make things harder. And I think especially for K-3 foundational skills, especially for kids who need personalization, that's not true. And so I don't think there's any reason why we should have third graders scoring 2 or 3 years below grade level, especially in math. It's just unconscionable, because the technology actually can teach you how to visualize that multiplication is simply repeated addition. Do it until you get it, and then you don't fail the system. So I think it's unfortunate that technology is so often about the sizzle and, closing the digital divide. And it's a way of ensuring that it's an X-ray machine. So if you don't have a broken arm, it's not going to make sure you get a test. But you can tell when you do have a broken arm, and it can provide a remedy without the teacher being brilliant or hardworking or even very smart. So And then for those brilliant and smart teachers, the data it kicks out daily about where kids are in their achievement trajectory is incredibly useful and incredibly useful in figuring out, well, what do I need to teach the whole class? So that's kind of my stand. I think it's unfortunate. There's a lot of very, very dusty hardware and software out there that's fundamentally getting used by one or two teachers on campus, all of them, and pretty boring.
A lot of us use computer graphics, and part of John's model is if you have a computer lab that's doing it. Do you use package software online? What is he using here?
I mean, John, I think John tries as hard as he can to be reliant on online stuff as well. I think what we're all trying to do is not need to call the $120 an hour guy to come fix everything. It's really important to us to try to put the money into the work rather than the maintenance of the machine. So I know John joined the board of Dreambox, which is one of the K3 math providers. So I know they're trying to move in that direction. So yeah, I mean, I think what's great about the rocket ship stuff is how drab and boring those labs are. Awesome, exactly how it should be. The excitement is the kids learning, and the excitement is the scores at the end of the year and the readiness for sixth grade when they was rocket ship. Yeah.
About keeping their attention. There's so much technology sitting that some of this, is trying to get their attention back on them. Are you looking at the norms of living systems?
Yeah, I mean,
so beyond the curriculum, what is helping them?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, there's some math stuff that's pretty good. There's some basic stuff that we think is pretty good. But like, for instance, next year we're going to be using Rosetta Stone. It's nothing really that sexy. It's just a good way for some of our recent immigrants to learn English at their own pace. I guess what I would say to this whole distraction issue is that what people are really talking about when they talk about that is a school culture issue. I think that you take kids from ACE who have been horrifically badly behaved in their previous schools, and at ACE they're forced to, change their minds about how much disrespect is tolerable towards the adults in the school and towards their peers. Technology can be really, really distracting if the curriculum's no good, or if the culture of the classroom allows for kids to not care about, oh, I want to get this done by the end of the week, so at the assembly I get my little Hello Kitty pencil because I mastered these 3 standards over the course of the week. I mean, again, kids are distractible, adults are distractible, technology can be as annoying or as useful as, anything in the classroom. Again, it's that we ascribe to technology this special glowiness that's going to distract or whatever. I mean, it's remarkably, even for the very, very poor kids that we serve, it's not super exciting. Our technology stuff is not distracting or not distracting. What's distracting is if your seatmate is yelling. That's really distracting.
We have about 10 more minutes with Greg, so keep firing questions. Get everything out of him that you can.
My older kids saw a lot of American science in college, where they're getting a lot of their, when they do their homework, it's all online, and they have X number of chances to work through something, and the data goes back to the professors as well. So is there anything in the gap in high school level? And by the way, I don't think they saw much of anything on the English language arts side.
I'm actually not the best person to ask about that. What I will say, though, is that a lot of the really cool stuff does depend on having usable home computer access. So, in my sort of world that I'm in, it's virtually nobody. So, so we tend not to do a lot of exploring of what if kids could do X, Y, and Z from away, or what if parents could access. There's some good stuff out there for that, and I think if you're funding more across the economic sort of, home income spectrum, I think there is some good stuff out there that connects families to what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking in terms of in your computer lab, there's stuff between, it sounds like a lot of the math stuff you have is actually elementary school math, because of where the A students come from.
Well, it's responsive. So according to the people who we're working with, it's got K-12 standards in there.
Oh.
And so basically what happens is that it'll go as far as you want to go. And again, that's why, quite literally, you're seeing 30 kids doing 30 totally different things. Hopefully there'll be more sort of a narrower spread as they get, older at age, that very, very bottom will start to get pushed upwards. I mean, if our 8th graders were in there, the hope would be that none of them would be doing it. But we tend to focus it on the 5th and 6th graders who are incoming students for whom, because the technology is best and foundational stuff, we tend to focus on. Yeah. Oh, sorry. It's called EPGY. It's a Stanford thing. And it's, they've been very, very helpful. But what we're finding is that the real bang for the buck for EPGY is that a teacher who doesn't understand anything about it gets a printout and knows that these 3 kids need to do some extra guided practice with this standard. Boom, and they can give it to a tutor, you can give it to a teacher. It's just super, super high leverage information daily. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they obviously high school.
Yeah.
Is the software that they can interact with adaptive? As they get things right along based on that, how you said the feedback to the detailed the standard category only, or does it get granular so they can do this kind of addition but not this kind of addition?
That's a good question, and I actually I'd have to check. I think when you're talking about foundational skills, sometimes I think some of the reports are not as granular as we would like. We get more of our granularity from an online assessment called the NWEA assessment, which is it's an assessment rather than a learning tool. So where we get down to the little fragments of standards is really the NWEA. But I think what the online math stuff does for us is at least be able to really clearly define where the kid hits the wall. So, and then sometimes it'll take the art of the teacher to sort of figure out, well, what piece of this obstacle is the one that's really needing to be retaught. Because that's the other thing, is that I think sometimes people want technology to teach, and I'm completely unsold on that notion.
And then in terms of language, like you said, that you only can reach out to the
Well, we're going to do Rosetta, yeah, and then there's something called the phonics program. I'm forgetting what it is. But I mean, again, the rocket ship folks know more about that stuff than we do, just because most of our kids, frankly, aren't needing that stuff. I forget what the phonics program is called. But yeah, there was one called Reasoning Mind that was going to demand so much time online from our kids, and our program actually depends quite a bit on individual tutoring as well. And so what we would have had to do in order to be in the Reasoning Mind cohort is we would have had to take the kids who need tutoring the most out of tutoring in order to spend enough time online, and we just don't think it's that good yet.
Yeah. One of our interest areas was achieving proficiency the kids in elementary school. I'm wondering how many of the kids starting middle school are proficient in reading, and if they're not, how do you address that?
Well, I mean, the ACE model is to try to get kids who are super non-proficient in 5th and 6th grade and get them to proficiency by 8th grade. So we do this sort of 1 quintile a year jump. So we'll have our first 8th grade class this year. Our internal metrics are looking like we may get up to, maybe 55, 60% proficient in 8th grade. And so if you look at, since our school is 96% Latino, 96% free-and-reduced smart, 75% English learner, those are very, 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 very reasonable numbers. And we look to up our 8th grade target by 5% every year. So I think that, one of the things about proficiency that's interesting that we've been struggling with is some of our kids who are making the most growth don't reach proficiency for 2 or 3 years, especially in English language arts if they don't speak English at home. So while I'm all for No Child Left Behind and the club it is on all of us, one of the things that's difficult for ACE is that we try to occupy a niche that holds on to more kids. A lot of the most successful charter schools are high attrition models, including the one that I helped start before ACE. And so we're looking to get kids on perhaps a more steady arc towards proficiency, which means that a lot of our kids may have made 3 years of growth over the course of a single school year, but they've gone from far below basic to high below basic, which is an awesome jump for them, but it doesn't really change our proficiency numbers. I think what's important for me in terms of proficiency numbers is how many kids are exiting the school at proficiency. Yeah, because the thing is that what tends to happen for schools who are focused on proficiency is that, and again, I don't want to get too jargony, but there's 5 levels on the California State Test: far below basic, and basic. Those 3 are all below grade level. Proficient, which is at grade level, and then advanced. So you're trying to work on your proficiency numbers. What you're going to do is you're going to focus on those basic kids, the bubble kids. And so you see all this frantic Saturday school happening for these kids who are on the verge of proficiency. And it's a little bit like, crack cocaine for schools, because your numbers go way up in terms of proficiency because you got these kids on the bubble. But the reason that the ACE model is, I think, well suited for Alum Rock is that if you look at the number of below basic and far below basic kids in 2nd grade district-wide and 8th grade, it slightly grows over time. What you're saying then is that a 2nd grader who can't read is a 9th grader who can't read. And so we're struggling with the whole proficiency numbers because we want proficiency, but we also don't want to make kids who aren't getting to proficiency feel like they aren't moving.
Wouldn't you love to have kids proficient when they come in at 5th grade? And then that argue for investing millions?
Absolutely. The thing is then I've always said it would be great if ACE was put out of business. It'd be awesome.
Okay, sorry we're out of time with Greg. Thank you so much, Greg.